Hi everybody, it's Peter Zallam's Griniflix Adventure 8 and welcome to another video. Recently I did a video on the Nikon Noct 58mm f1.2 lens, a vintage lens that's probably over 40-50 years old now, and it performed outstandingly. So I thought I'd follow up with a similar type of lens review, but on the Leica side, the Noctilux side in fact, and compare some of the Noctilux lenses compared to the Summilux lens. What I did borrow this time, I actually borrowed this. It's a Noctilux 50mm f1. Yes, in its original box. What does it look like? There it is there. The lens and also the lens hood. Now we won't need the lens hood right now. I suppose we can put it on, and at least that way you'll be able to see what it looks like. But there it is. It's in very good, or pristine condition. So I have to be really careful. Take the lens cap off here. And yes, you can see that. A lovely looking lens. If I say so myself, that's if you're really into good looking lenses. There you go. And then we have a lens cap. Not a lens cap, we've got a lens hood. So that's how the lens looks with the lens hood on. Alright, so that's the 50 f1 Noctilux. Alright. A few years ago, after saving up some pennies, I did invest in a very good condition used Noctilux. Yep, another one. This is a 0.95. So this is quite an amazing lens. I'll be able to compare that. I recently got the Noctilux remanufactured f1.2. It's got this plastic case on it, so I'll just take that off. And you can see it there. This is actually quite a bit smaller lens, so still a Noctilux lens under the brand Noctilux. So anything less than 1.5 f-stop is considered to be a Noctilux. This is 1.2. That's why we've got the 1.2, the 1 and the 0.95. They're all called Noctilux lenses. And they all are different and peculiar in some aspect or manner. If you are interested in buying any Noctilux lens, or you're interested just to see how it performs against the Summilux lens, the Leica Summilux lens, the 51.4, well then hang around and you'll see. Alright, well here we have the 4 lenses that I'll be testing. These are all 50mm. So the Noctilux 0.95, the one that I borrowed, the Noctilux 1.0, and the Noctilux 1.2, and then as a reference point the Summilux 1.4. It'll be interesting to see how they compare to each other, as well as any particular peculiarities about the lens. I'll take one of these lenses out into the street at night during the day, and we'll take some shots as well, so we'll at least share those with you as well. So we'll do that with the borrowed lens, which is the Noctilux 1.0. As far as ages are concerned, this Summilux 1.4 I think is about 2010, so it's about 15 years old. The 1.2 Noctilux only came out a few years ago, so I think that's 2021. It's modelled after a lens, an older Noctilux in the 60s. The Noctilux 1.0 is 1982. And the Noctilux 0.95 is 2014. Alright, they do all vary in prices. Brand new, we're looking around 21,000 in Australian dollars for the 0.95. The 1.2, that's that one there, is somewhere around the 13,000 mark. The Summilux around the 7,000 or 8,000 mark. And the 1.0, I think it's somewhere around the $10,000 mark. What I've done is I've set up a test chart in my studio here behind the green screen. That's not green. in editing it should be some other colour. And we'll be able to do a bit of a comparison. Model of the Ducati 900 SS 1975 model, and that will be the foreground, so at least be able to see some of the bokeh as well. The camera that I'll be using for testing all these lenses is my Leica M11, so they will be colour, and we'll be able to see how they all perform on this 60 megapixel camera. Okay, jumping into Lightroom. What I've done is I've taken all the photographs I've taken. I've taken a whole bunch of lenses here. You can see Noctilux 0.95, the Noctilux 1.2, f1.0, and the Summilux 1.4, and all the different apertures that I used in some 0.95, obviously depends on the lens, 1.0, 1.2, 1.4, all the way up to 16. And then one category that just I call open, which means comparing these lenses wide open. Let's do that first. Let's have them wide open. And in the wide open sections, I've got my charts here. So we've got the Summilux f1.4 on the left, and we've got the Noctilux 1.2, the new version of the one that was available in the 1960s. So let's you can't really tell at this view, but if we go in at 200%, then we can see a bit more detail. So this is basically the center. The Summilux is at 1.4, the Noctilux is at 1.2 here, and straight away you can see that the Summilux has got a higher contrast, similar detail. I mean, this is at 200%, so looking at the writing, it's probably a bit more on the Summilux. And then as we go off to one side, then you can see the Noctilux 1.2 quickly starts to become out of focus and soft, and that is definitely the character of the 1.2, whereas the Summilux is pretty much sharp all the way to the edge. This time we've got the Noctilux 1.2 on the left, and we've got the Noctilux 1.0, the one that I've been talking about, on the right. So if we zoom in, this was a bit surprising. The Noctilux 1.2 actually was, relatively speaking to the 1.0, much the same in the middle, possibly a little bit sharper than the 1.0, and seemed to have better contrast as well. Then when we start moving across to the left or away from center, you can see the 1.0 maintains its focus, and contrast is pretty good, whereas the 1.2 quickly fades away. And when you get close to the edge here, so we're basically here on the left hand side, you can see the Noctilux 1.2 is quite fuzzy compared to the 1.1. And now we've got the 1.0 Noctilux there on the left, and now the 0.95 Noctilux on the right. I think the 0.95 is a little bit sharper than the 1.0. And then if we sort of move towards left again, the 1.0 does start to lose some of the detail, goes out of focus, much the same as the 0.95, and probably the level of change is much the same in both cases. So when we're close to the edge here now, you can see that this printing here is not dissimilar to the printing on the 0.95. And the last two lenses, okay, this is where I throw in the Nikon 50mm f1.2 Z lens, and we're looking at the Z lens against the 0.95 Noctilux, and straight away you can see how there's a lot more contrast in the Z lens, being a very modern lens. As far as the detail is concerned, it's probably similar to the 0.95, but where you see the big changes is when you start going towards the edge. The Z lens maintains its detail and contrast right to the very edge, whereas the 0.95 drops off. Z against the f1 against the f1.0 Noctilux. Noctilux on the left, Z on the right, and you can see there's a big difference. The Z is much sharper than the 1.0 Noctilux. And when you come towards the edges there, you can just see how much difference there is. That's wide open. Now, you would expect that things will change when you start to stop down and they do. So if we go, let's say, take all the lenses to say 1.4, so every lens now is at 1.4, including the Simulux, which is now wide open, and let's have a quick look too. So this time we've got the 0.95 on the left, we got the Simulux 1.4 on the right. And if we just look at, there's a bit of fringing with the 0.95, but otherwise the contrast is similar. The printing, you can see the detail here is very similar. Once we start going towards the edges there, you can see the Simulux is still more detail and sharper. The Noctilux 0.95 does drop off. Got the Simulux on the left, 1.4. We've got the Noctilux 1.2 on the right. Then the Noctilux 1.2 at 1.4. F-stop, we move towards edges. Again, the Noctilux hasn't improved at 1.4, hasn't improved much at all compared to the Simulux, which is still, wide open. We saw that. Got 1.2 on the left, the 1.0 on the right, both at 1.4. Yeah, the contrast on the 1.0 at 1.4 is quite nice. I think there's still a bit more detail in the 1.2, but once we start going to the edges, yes, we still lose a lot of detail on the 1.2 compared to the 1. Let's make it quite significant. Let's try 2.8 and let's see what results we get at 2.8. Simulux 1.4 on the left, the Noctilux 1.2 on the right, both at 2.8. And you can see they both sharpen up really nicely, and both are very similar as far as contrast and sharpness. When we start moving towards the edge there, yes, the 1.2 is improving quite substantially, not quite to the level of the Simulux. 1.1 on the left, the Noctilux 0.95 on the right. 2.8, both are great. When we move towards the edges there, then 0.95 is sharper than the 1. The Z50 1.2 on the left, the Noctilux 0.95 on the right. Both are pretty sharp in the middle, which is, you would expect that at 2.8. And then when we move towards the edges there, the Z lens is obviously sharper. Final one, there we go, 5.6, and now we've got all 5 lenses again. Alright, so what do we got with the Noctilux 0.95 on the left, Simulux 1.4 on the right, both very sharp in the middle. Head towards edges there. The Noctilux 0.95 is starting to sharpen up quite a bit, almost the same as the Simulux 1.4 there. So at 5.6 everything becomes clear. So I've got Simulux 1.4 on the left, the Noctilux 1.2. Okay, so the middle is fine. As we go towards the left side here, the 1.2 does sharpen up very quickly at that stage and is sharp, pretty much sharp right across, much the same as the Simulux. 0.0 Noctilux on the right and the 1.2 Noctilux on the left. Both are pretty good in the middle. And this is interesting, isn't it? The 1.2 Noctilux is sharper at 5.6 than the 1.1 on the edges. Yeah, says a lot for the 1.2 Noctilux. I'm impressed. Z lens on the right, Noctilux 1.0 on the left. And I guess you'd have no surprises here. The Z is sharp, of course. Let's have a look at my subject where I've got do wide open. Here's got the Noctilux 0.95 on the left and the Simulux 1.4 on the right. No surprises, you've got more bokeh there on the Noctilux 0.95 compared to the Simulux because of different apertures, so 0.95 versus 1.4. Both are, the sharpness of both lenses are similar. We do have that purple fringing with the Noctilux, so some of that can be removed in post-processing. I haven't done that. Simulux on the left, 1.4, the Noctilux 1.2 on the right. More bokeh, more fuzziness in the background there for the 1.2. Again, you'd expect that. Different type of fringing with the Noctilux. Detail is concerned, looking at this pinstriping. Yes, the Simulux is a bit better than the Noctilux 1.2, the 1.2 Noctilux on the left, the 1.0 Noctilux on the right. Bokeh, what is it like? Is it similar? Then when we have a look at the detail here, yeah, you see that the 1.2 is sharper in the center than the 1.0. Things sharpen up at 5.6. I think we've sort of worked that out before. So what do we got here? We've got the Noctilux 0.95 on the left, the Sumlux 1.4 on the right, both at 5.6. Both create a very sharp image. And then the bokeh is slightly, the differences in bokeh won't be much, I think, in any of these lenses at 5.6. Final comparison, which I thought might be interesting. I've got the Nikon 58mm Noct lens, and we'll compare that. I wanted to compare that to the Noctilux 1.2. So now we've got the Nikon 58mm Noct lens, which is also 1.2, versus a Noctilux M1.2. The Nikon 58mm f1.2 Noct is actually very sharp in the middle. The contrast is great. I think if we look at the inner circle here, the inner circle of the Nikon, I think they're probably much the same, it's just that the contrast is different on the Nikon. And then as we sort of scroll towards the left here, I know the Noctilux 1.2 will fade away with its focus. I want to see how much that would occur on the Noct 58. Not quite. It doesn't change. You know, from the center, the Noctilux does quickly start to fade away as far as its focus, whereas the Nikon 58 Noct holds it for a while and then fades off quickly, I noticed. So once we right over to the edge here, both lenses become much the same. Anyway, that's a bit of a side note. Let's have a look at some photographs on the street.
I don't really know what comes next. I'm just doing my best, even though I'm so stressed out. Everything just feels like a test that I feel so depressed when I can't seem to get out. But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired by all this shit. Tell me that I can and I won't. That's what guides me the most. Your lies, I'll do what I want. I'm inspired by thirst, I'm inspired by worth. I desire your worst, so you can just hide while I work. I ain't tired, you first. I'll write a second, third verse about the lies you go disperse. You never did shit, I know it hurts. But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired by all this shit. Tell me that I can and I won't. That's what guides me the most. Your lies, I'll do what I I don't really know what comes next. I'm just doing my best, even though I'm so stressed out. Everything just feels like a test that I fail, so depressed when I can't seem to get out. But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired by all this shit. Tell me that I can and I won't. That's what guides me the most. Your lies, I'll do what I I'm inspired by thirst, I'm inspired by worth. I desire your worst, so you can just hide while I work. I ain't tired, you first. I'll write a second, third verse about the lies you go disperse. You never did shit, I know it hurts. But something deep inside won't let me quit. I Swear that I'm inspired by all this shit. Tell me that I can and I won't. That's what guides me the most. Kill lies, I'll do what I want.
Any surprises with those results? So I guess in summary, where do I put the Noctilux 1.0 compared to the Noctilux 1.2 and compared to the 0.95? Okay, first things first, when you're dealing with Noctilux lenses and these very small apertures, which means the glass is really wide open like this, it means that there's a really narrow depth of field. So whatever you're going to do with your focus, as soon as your subject moves just slightly in or out relative to where you are, it's going to change its focus amount. And even when I'm being really careful with this camera and using live view on the back, and so you can see exactly what you're getting in focus and what you're not, even with the test charts, you can see there's still a slight variance, and even just the slightest variance changes the detail that you get in the image. Taking that all into consideration, I would say the 0.95 Noctilux is probably almost the sharpest, I suppose. Right, if we're talking about right smack in the middle of the lens, the 0.95, and in fact the 1.2 Noctilux. They're both very good at right smack in the middle. And this, the 1.0 also performs very good right smack in the middle. It's very hard to tell them apart, really, to tell you the truth. But it's when you start to go off towards the sides, that's where you notice the difference. The 1.2 is designed in a similar manner to the original one was back in the 1960s, where the bokeh and the fuzziness and the out of focusness starts to drift off towards the sides quite substantially, and that can create some really interesting bokeh effects. So the 1.2 Noctilux is a really unusual lens, and I'm really starting to appreciate it even more and more. I did use this one at a wedding, at a family wedding, and there'll be a link in the video to that, so you'll be able to see some results that were done in black and white with the Noctilux 1.2. The 0.95 has a more, it doesn't drop off as far as it's focused from the center, wide open, as much as the 1.2. It's the drop off on the 0.95 is probably similar to that of the 1.0. When I compared it to the Summilux 1.4, it just shows you how good the Summilux 1.4 is, and you get really fine detail, great contrast in the center all the way to the sides, which is outstanding. If you haven't got a Noctilux at all and you're thinking of actually purchasing one, well then you're going to be probably in Australian dollars be paying over $10,000 regardless of what you go for, right up to $21,000 if you go new for the 0.95. Which is best value for money? I don't know. I think it's really a case personal preference on when you start to go into this category of lenses and pricing. Which Noctilux would you think? Do you have any of these? I welcome your comments. And if you're thinking of maybe getting one of the Noctiluxes, what's your view? It was interesting actually comparing it to the Nikon lenses as well, the 1.2 Z lens and also the 58mm Noct Nikkor, the vintage lens. Welcome your comments. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up. That's how you support the channel. Oh, the other way to support the channel is to use some of the deals that I have on my deals page or the adventure8.com.au. So just go to, again, to the web page, adventure8.com.au shop, and you'll see all the links there and discounts. You go to that page and you see all the discounts from affiliated companies that are associated with my channel. For example, iTECHWORLD, which makes lithium batteries and power stations and solar generators. Use the Adventure 8 discount code and you get an extra 5% discount That's 5% on top of all the other discounts that are on the website for their products. That's pretty useful. If you're after a dash cam for your car, there's also REDTIGER, and you'll see, I think there's 10% discount on those. Do you need transport? Electric bikes? Low carbon footprint? Or try VAMOS bikes, and I've done a number of reviews of their bikes, and they've given me a discount code for each of their electric bikes, and depending on which code it is, depends on what benefit you get. But in summary, there's probably about $200 savings that you'll have across the purchase of each one of those bikes. Yes, so if it's the first time to my channel, you haven't already subscribed, then do press subscribe, press notifications. You'll be notified when the next video is out. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers, bye.